Good morning, live from Sinai Temple in Los Angeles. I'm Rabbi Erez Sherman with Rabbi on the Sidelines, where sports and faith intersect. We are joined this morning by Coach Seth Greenberg, ESPN College Analayst, two-time ACC Coach of the Year at Virginia Tech, Maccabi USA, coach in the land of Israel, but most importantly, a word that we like to use on this show, a mensch, a great person. Coach, it's so great to see you this morning. How are you?
I thought I was doing this with Reese Davis. I'm doing this with a rabbi?
Exactly. I heard you told me first rabbinic podcast. That's a moment that we say Shehechianu.
It might be my last, depending on how it goes.
No. And
great. We're gonna have a blast.
An early happy Purim as well. And I just want to say I've been following the show on ACC Network, Bald Men Not on Campus, from a rabbinic podcast. A just quick suggestion: if we throw you a couple of kippahs for the host, that show's off the air. I know Jay's trying to say how many weeks it hasn't been canceled.
He's trying to get us off there. It's one more thing he has to do.
Yeah. So we'll just dive right into it. Faith and sports. Do they intersect? Is there any moment over your college and coaching career that you have seen that faith and sports intersect?
Well, faith and sports intersect in ignorance, probably. I mean, I think that, look, there's a lot of love in our world. There's a lot of hate in our world. There's a lot of people that don't know what they don't know. There's a lot of stereotypes in our world. So I would say, for me, and I can only speak from my own personal experiences. First of all, I mean, I've coached players that were deeply spiritual, whether it would, whatever their religions were, and that their faith was important to them, and it made them stronger, made them better. It gave them something when things were tough. I mean, adversity, I always say, visits the strong, it lives with the weak. But if it visits the strong, part of that strength comes from maybe your belief in your faith. So I've had players that have obviously dealt with adversity in sport through their faith. But then there's also, personal experiences. Unfortunately, the world we live in, there's a lot of hate, and there's a lot of people that are mean-spirited. And a lot of times mean-spirited comes through stereotype. A lot of mean-spirited comes through people that are different than you, whether it's black, white, whether it's, Muslim, whether it's Jewish, whatever it is. People say things that they don't really understand have consequences. It's the world we live in. It's the social media world we live in. It's people are faceless. It started with talk radio. People could come on talk radio and say whatever they wanted because they didn't have to be basically held accountable to their words. And then it spread to social media, other aspects of social media, which is, whether it's Twitter or Instagram or anything else, where you can say things, you don't have to look someone in the eye and say them. And I think people are too free to, not free, but too loose in terms of words have meanings, and hurtful words have meanings, and hurtful words are hurt. And so, yeah, I mean, as I coached, did I experience things of that nature? Sure, I did. Now, when you're walking on and off the court and you're coaching in the ACC, people are going to say things. Did they say mean-spirited things? They said mean-spirited things that were personal. They said mean-spirited things sometimes that had to do with your faith or the way you spelt your last name, which is a reflection of who you are. So it is some of them you address, some of them, which I did when we were at New Mexico State. Some of them you don't address because you don't respond, because sometimes responding to someone screaming in the stands basically validates them and actually gives them the 5 minutes of fame that they were looking for. So I say, yes, it does. I think the positive is I've had guys that were extremely spiritual that I think it really helped them get through some tough times. And I think that's, in that matter, it's a good thing.
So you say, sports is an equalizer. You have a group of 18 to 22-year-old men who really don't know each other besides the game of basketball. Are there moments where you bring those people together to learn those lessons so that ignorance does not happen, both on the court, but really, more importantly, off the court?
Yeah, I mean, the perfect example during everything that was going on in the world during this summer between the pandemic and the social unrest in our country. I had a Zoom call with 70 of my former players.
Nice.
And we just talked through it, and I listened a lot. But our whole idea at the end of that conversation was that we didn't want to just sit there and talk. We wanted to leave there and have a conclusion. So we wanted to have basically solution-based conversation. And our solution-based conversation was, at the end of it, we were going to do two things. We were going to try to touch someone in a positive way to help right or wrong, basically to help someone look through the world through a different prism and try to impact our community. And the second thing we were going to do is this is one of the things I've done a lot in the pandemic, because you can't touch people anymore because of the lack of the protocol that you need to carry on, is I recommended to our guys that, you know what, pick up the phone and call someone who's had an impact on your life.
Nice.
Say thank you. And just imagine if everyone did that every day, how much better our world would be. Just the idea of picking up a phone. I spoke to my high school coach. I took my ninth grade coach. My high school coach, a guy named Erwin Stewart, and just say, Mr. Stewart, hey, you know what? During a difficult time in my life, you were always there for me. And it was great. I called my ninth grade coach, who was during the time my parents were being divorced, and he was like a rock for me in terms of just someone I could, kind of bounce things off of. And literally, we were on the phone for an hour and a half. And I'm going to play, hopefully this summer, I'm going to drive out to Long Island, play golf with him and spend an afternoon with him. But I think, if you have conversations, everyone says the conversations are tough. I don't find them tough. If you care and you can look people in the eye and you're honest, they're real. They're not tough.
Mm-hmm.
If you listen as much as you talk, they're not tough. If they're solution-based, they're not tough. They're actually worthwhile. So I don't find it hard discussing difficult topics and listening to difficult topics. And, I don't agree with everything everyone says, and we can agree to disagree. We can, Jay Billis and I, we joke we can disagree without being disagreeable.
Like, it sounds very Talmudic. I don't know if Jay knows the Talmud as well as you do, but
he probably knows it better than me.
Yeah. When you talk about solution-based, throughout college basketball, especially this year, Andy Katz a couple of weeks ago said that no coach is going to silence a player. And just watching all of these games and seeing, for instance, the words on the jersey, equality and justice, do you see some solution-based actions coming out of this season, especially in the pandemic, especially during the times of racial tension?
Yeah, I think look, I mean, you should, part of coaching is educating your guys and putting them in experiences, but also you want to see them then grow from those experiences. You don't want to control them. You want to talk through those experiences so that they can now form their own opinions. And then they can go on and do exactly what I said before, is impact someone else. So I think this year, we've seen the world not be afraid to take a stand against, things that have been the norm too long. And to have the young people of our world, not just our country, but our world, step up and recognize things that are wrong is a beautiful thing. So, I mean, as long as, and it's kind of silly, as long as the guys are educated, like, to me, why are you doing what you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you saying what you're saying? Are you saying it because someone else said it? Or are you saying it because you really understand the depth of the situation? There's a difference between following and leading. And, you can lead by being educated on what you're standing up for. You're following if you just, well, so-and-so said this, so I believe. And I think that it's really, really important that, the conversations, bringing people in to better educate your players on history is the key. And then the other part of the key is how you're going about your messaging. I'm very straight up. There's a difference between peaceful protest and looting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's really, looting is taking advantage of a situation. Peaceful protest is trying to make change because there's wrong in this world, and that your voice needs to be heard in a positive way. And I thought that actually, and I'm not a very political person, so I mean, but I thought Joe Biden put it really, really well during the course of the election. He said he's 100% for peaceful protest. He's 100% against opportunistic looting of communities, because you're hurting your own communities. And to me, that's, there's no place for that, because you're hurting the people that need the most help, that are in communities that are trying to make a difference in communities. So I think it's great what we're seeing, the activism of the young people and athletes in college athletics. I think it's beautiful. And I think that the coaches are using these opportunities to be educated themselves, to bring people in to speak to their players, to educate their players and educate them, so that, we can eventually look at things through a similar prism.
So let's go first back to Long Beach. When you were out here on the West Coast, you go to New Mexico, you briefly referenced this just before. Take us through that incident where I believe you walk in the locker room, you see an anti-Semitic remark, and then you explain to your players what this is all about. There was some backlash in terms of how you reacted. What did that look like? And that's not 2021. I believe that was 1996. What did that look like in that moment and your reaction?
I walked into the locker room for our shoot around, and I was going to go through a couple of things on the grease board just in terms of what we were going to try to get done in practice and the walkthrough. And usually I go when we go to shoot around when the kids are stretching, I usually put the personnel on the grease board so that when we come back later in the game, I don't have to deal with that. So I opened the grease board and
I do that the same thing for the bar mitzvahs on Shabbat.
Yeah, I see that.
Make sure they're all there.
Yeah. So, I opened the grease board and said, "We're going to kick your ass, you Jew bastard." Wow. I was taken back, obviously. Obviously our kids, our players were understood that was what anti-Semitism is and what was said. And we went down and we practiced, played the game. Game's over, a very volatile game. We had a great rivalry with New Mexico State. This was fairly close to after my dad passed. Mm-hmm. We played Utah State first at home, which I flew back for that game, and I think that might have been our next game. And I go to the press conference. I think I got a technical in that game. I'm not sure, but we had a group of people at the end of our bench that were saying all kinds of racist remarks to our players and some anti-Semitic things to me. And and I basically went off in the press conference and said, "You know what?" I said, "This has nothing to do with the game. This is bigger than the game, and that there's no place in our society for this." And the funny thing is, when I saw it in the locker room, I'm a big believer the locker room is a sacred place. All right,
yes.
All right. You've got the temple, I've got the locker room in my coaching world. Mm-hmm. And to me, the locker room is a great lesson for the rest of the world, because in the locker room, people are respected for who they are. Mm-hmm. Right? Whether black, white, Jewish, Catholic, Protestant, it makes no difference. Well, our world could learn a lot from our locker rooms because we have tremendous trust in each other and respect for each other in the locker room. So the whole idea of first it being in the locker room was almost like sacrilegious to me. Then we'll play the game, and we didn't play well, but we have these people at the end of the bench that were using all kinds of language that's inappropriate. So I go into the press conference and I say, basically, what was on the board? I said, if I ignored it, I'm condoning it. I can't condone that type of behavior. I can't condone those type of words. I can't condone the behavior of the fans at the end of the bench that were screaming at my players throughout the game. I said, I'm going to stand up for what's wrong. Stand up against what's wrong. And if I ignored it, then I would be condoning it and saying it's all right to behave that way. It's all right to put those type of things on the grease board. Well, then the coach of New Mexico State says, I was imagining it because I was just, it was emotional because it was right after my dad died. I said, no, right. Really? Seriously? You're going to go there? And so what became a heated rivalry became a great, more heated rivalry. And then when they came back and played at our place, we had this whole laser show of unity, and our university, Long Beach, did a tremendous job with it. But it's something that stuck with me forever, and it was great that we used symbolism of people being together in unity and togetherness and trust. But I got to be honest with you, I will never forget the words of Neil McCarthy when he said, "Well, I was imagining it." I mean. There was nothing imaginative about it. It's written right on the grease board. There's and the words that were said at the end of our bench, that wasn't me hearing things. I mean, believe me, I was 100% fine. So I just thought it was important to basically expose it.
Great. No, that's amazing. I want to take us from New Mexico and Long Beach to across the ocean to Israel, as you also had the opportunity to work with the Maccabi team. You were quoted in many different articles saying, "This volunteer position is important to me because anytime you can represent your country and your faith in the same event, it's something very special. Maccabi, you don't get paid to coach there. You do it for the love of the game. You do it for the love of our people. From that incident in New Mexico, now to the land of Israel, basically Jewish Olympics. Compare those two experiences. Are they connected at all? And how does faith play a role in those experiences?
They're not connected. I just, you go and you make that trip, and first of all, you can read all you want about Israel and their fight to remain who they are as a country. And it's and again, I don't know I can say these words, but we had a guard that was with us, an officer, Israeli Army. And two of the things that were really interesting, I said, how do you guys deal with, what is it like living here in this country? When you know that there's so much violence surrounding you and there's so much hate surrounding you. And the first thing I said, and it's kind of the Israeli mentality, which I thought was really fascinating, is that we were sitting at lunch and the member of the military took out a little small plate. He said, this is Israel. This is the Middle East. And then he took a salt pepper shaker, put it in the middle. He said, and this is Israel. He said, all these people here are trying to kill us. He said, and we're kicking their ass every day. which was, as you know, it was kind of a little bit the mindset of how the Israeli people have survived in the Middle East. But just the Maccabi experience of bringing Jewish athletes from all over the world together, from different countries, and having them have that shared experience, and having them seeing the athletes share their stories, and it sounds a silly thing, but exchanging pins and gear and developing relationships was phenomenal. Because even though I grew up in New York and Long Island, and obviously grew up in a fairly large Jewish population in Plainview, that was eye opening. That there was a commonality right there, and the stories that you listen to the athletes, the stories we've all had the similar stories, which I thought was fascinating. So that was first and foremost, just to be part of it. The opening ceremony was phenomenal. Talking to the people that were assigned to us from Israel, talking about the young people that have to go to the military, that understand their, and I asked, because there's no drinking age in Israel. So like we go into Tel Aviv and like you see these young kids drinking. And I turned to, the guy that was our host. I said, like, that kid can't be more than like 13, 14 years old. Down to, the street, drinking a beer. And he goes, that's fine. Once he goes to the military, he'll be straightened out. Yeah. It just, but the pride, like there's never a time where the Israeli people don't have great pride in their country. And there's no time in ever that there's a question of lack of unity within the country. That was kind of because of the fight, because of the struggle, because the struggle's every day. Right. It's not a one-time thing. It's not like, to me, that was, you could see just the experience that they'd been through is so different than the experiences we go through in the States. Absolutely. Yeah. And you can see actually, the Washington Wizards with an Israeli player, they take pride even within sports. Maccabi USA, Amari Stoudemire, and the list goes on as Israeli basketball is becoming big as well. And my brother coaches, he's coached all over there. He's won an Israeli championship. He beat David Blatt in the championship game when he was coaching. I think it was at that point he was coaching Haifa. He's spent he's coached all over the world, but he's spent probably 8 of the last 10 years in Israel, coaching in the pro league. So it was a great experience. It was an important experience that my youngest daughter, and just full disclosure, my daughters weren't bat mitzvahed, but my youngest daughter flew over. Not yet. She was born when she was born, basically, with my wife, to Israel to experience with us. Wow. Which was, which was a really cool thing. And the way they set up the Maccabi experience is part athletic, obviously part educational.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And so it was really I wish I could have done it. I was supposed to be the head coach years later. My brother ended up doing it because when I got let go of Virginia Tech, we were going to do it together, which would have been an incredible experience. But and now he's doing it on a daily basis because he's living there, and like it's funny because I'm finally getting my vaccine on Monday, yes. and like he's already gotten his vaccine, and Israel, typical of Israel, they are so far ahead of the world in terms of vaccinations and in their battle against the virus. But like he said, that's just what they do.
That's what they do. Exactly. So you transitioned from coaching to telling stories to basically being in a rabbinic role, right? You tell stories in an unbelievable way. Take us through that transition. How do you decide you can tell 100 stories. You only have a certain amount of minutes on a show with production and everything like that. How do you decide to tell these millions of people each week who are tuning into basketball, especially as March Madness is coming up, that inspirational story? What goes into that?
Rabbi, you don't have a guy in your ear saying rap.
No, actually, we did for the high holidays this year because we had to. We were doing a production. So that was the first time we experienced that.
Yeah. And so, it's different. You try to put your stories in context. You try to bring something to life is basically what it is. What I do is I take my years of coaching. I'm at 36 years of coaching and playing. And you try to take that and, depending on the game or the situation or the incident that happened, you try to run a parallel. Like this past week, you had a situation with Texas and West Virginia. And in the Texas Virginia game, where the two players really, really go at it.
Exactly.
So what I do, and I reach back and I say, well, if I'm in that situation, how am I going to handle it? Well, from 36 years of coaching, I'm going to say, you know what? Look, we weren't playing against. Our next game was against Kansas. You're not playing against Kansas until you can get your situation resolved in your own house. It's common sense, really. So what I do, I bring those two players together and say, what's the root of this? Why did this happen? How did this happen? And how do we move forward? And then you've got to apologize to your teammates, not only apologize in words, but apologize by your actions.
Exactly.
Well, you just try to reach back. If it's an actual basketball conceptual situation of something that happened in a game, like right now, the big conversation next few weeks, what? People being on the bubble.
Exactly.
Actually, I was on the bubble for 48 straight months.
Yeah.
So I've got a lot of stories about the bubble. That's just the way it is. So
what do you think? Duke in or out? What do we got?
Yeah, right now they're out. Because they got to win games. Can they play themselves in? Yeah, they can play themselves in.
Yeah, Monday looked like they were in against my team in Syracuse.
And here's the thing. So what did Monday do? All Monday did was make their next game against Louisville more important. Because they don't have enough quality wins against the field to be in. So what do you have to do? You can't have bad losses. You got to have quality wins. So what the win against Syracuse did was obviously it kept them in the conversation. Now, a lot of things impact your ability to get in with your Duke and what else. What you're doing and also what's happening in other leagues. Like what if there's an upset in a league that's a one-bid league and someone else wins? Now all of a sudden that eliminates a spot. For Duke, now they're playing against Georgia Tech and Louisville in the next two games, and then North Carolina. North Carolina loses to Marquette. That's a quad 3 loss. That game becomes bigger. Like if I'm Duke, I'm saying I probably got to sweep these next 3.
Right.
So I'm bubble mate in Louisville, bubble mate in Georgia Tech, and maybe even a bubble game against North Carolina. So
when you talk about bubble and success, right? Often nowadays, in terms of social media and quick sound bites, success is winning a championship. Success is getting to a Final Four, right? Coach Boeheim didn't get to a Final Four until 1987. Couldn't win a championship till 2003. No success. But there are so many levels of success. You're a 2-time ACC Coach of the Year at Virginia Tech. How do you measure success? Number one, how do you identify being a Coach of the Year? How do you get to that spot? Is it luck? Is it fortune? And what's the measure of success?
Well, those teams when I was Coach of the Year those years, everything's about did you exceed expectation? My first year I was ACC Coach of the Year. We just came into the ACC. People thought we were going to be the worst team in the league. We were going to devalue the league. We win 8 games. We beat Duke. They beat us by 100. I mean, the first game was against North Carolina at home. The year they won that championship, they beat us by 100. The next game was at Duke, where I got thrown out, and they beat us by about 99. From there to winning 8 games, getting the bye in the ACC tournament, and beating Duke at home after we got beat by 100. So, we exceeded expectation. And I had really good players. I had really good players who were incredible people that were fiercely competitive, that bought in, that dealt with adversity, that continued to work, didn't get beat down. And our mindset was we weren't going to be an opponent in the ACC. We were going to try to compete and win just like anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second time, the same thing. It was a year we won at Duke. We won at Carolina. We were a half a game away from winning the ACC championship. And expectation, we were picked to the bottom of the league, and we ended up coming third here. But we had good players. I mean, you don't win without players. Tricky players make tricky coaches. I mean, that's just the way it is. And
but how do you get those players? A good coach, right? Everything that you've been saying today.
Evaluate and develop. You evaluate and develop. I mean, no different than what you do probably with the young people in your congregation. All right, you have people that have potential, and what are you trying to do? You're trying to bring the potential out of them. So what are you trying to develop them? You're trying to educate them. You're trying to get them to be the best version of themselves, be better human beings, be better to others. Impact the congregation, impact society. That's basically you're coaching. You're coaching your congregation. I mean, everyone's a coach. So like my lessons from the bubble, I was pitching an idea, life lessons from the bubble, because we all learn lessons.
Love it.
And and basically my story, because I didn't have I played for Alabama at Fairleigh Dickinson University, better known as Harvard on the Hackensack. I didn't play for North Carolina. I didn't play for a blue blood, but I had a great passion. My dad played for the great Claire B at LIU. I grew up in a basketball environment. And my brother and I, my oldest brother did, but my brother and I pursued a career in coaching. But the lessons you learn along the way, I've been fired multiple times. I was fired as an assistant coach at Pittsburgh because I didn't do what the head coach asked me to do, because what the head coach asked me to do was unethical. So I didn't do it. So I let go. I took a risk when I went to Miami and left Miami to go to Long Beach State. You would say, why did you go to Miami to Long Beach State to play first as an assistant coach in a gym that seated about 1,900 people? Well, I looked at it as an opportunity. I didn't know one person in California, but, again, life on the bubble, it was worth that risk. Unfortunately, it was worked out for me. But, I've been fired multiple times. I mean, I was the ACC coach here twice, got fired at Virginia Tech. I was fortunate that I had enough relationships. I never had a coaching agent, but I did because of an opportunity. I had a media agent, Gideon Cohen, who I call the world's greatest agent, the Montag Group and IF Management. Well, Gideon saw something in me and gave me an opportunity to work at CBS College Sports. When he was working there, he told me, I'll give you a one-day contract. Come in. Can you come in? And then at the end of that first day, he gave me 7 days. And then, from that, he became an agent and one of my dearest friends. And so, I mean, it's, life's a journey. It's not a destination. There are roadblocks and detours, and how you handle those roadblocks and detours determine your success. And then you've got to have people. You've got to have people that impact your life. You got to have, everyone has a mentor. I don't care who you are, where you're from. Rabbis have mentors. I've had great mentors. I've had great support from my brother, and my family, but I've also had mentors. I had a guy like Terry Holland, bring me on when I got let go at Pitt as a student assistant or graduate assistant or whatever, and he became a big part of most major decisions I made in my life. So, knock on wood, I've been really fortunate to have good people in my life that have helped me with this journey and traveled this journey with me.
So, 2 last questions. The first comes from our social media audience in terms of compensating players based on TV revenues and more. I know that's been the hot question out there. You think it'll occur, or do you think it's the right thing to do?
I don't think off of TV revenues. I think what they should do is probably, I have no problem with name, image, and likeness. I think that would be look, you have a name, I have a name. We own that name. We have a likeness. I mean, we own that likeness. I mean, I think that makes common sense. Here's the deal. And where I differ from others is I don't think that it's going to be whatever. It could potentially turn into legalized cheating, but especially with the economy the way it is right now, let's be honest. I mean, there's everything. You get $100,000, and you get $100,000, you get an ad, and you get an ad. And by the way, you're an influencer, and you're an influencer. There's only so many people that can be influencers. That's the difference that we made in social media as influencers. So how many people really? I mean, I think you're going to see uh, players of all sports maybe have opportunities to run clinics and camps and make money. I think you'll see some local and college towns. I think you're going to see some players have opportunities in local markets.
Mm-hmm.
These national brands, they're going to vet the people they hire for years. Let me ask you, Rabbi, I mean, you're around young people all the time. If you were a CEO of a big corporation, you're obviously being a rabbi, you're like a CEO. But like, would you take a 17-year-old on a college campus and make him the ambassador of your brand?
Right. No, I mean, I think what you said earlier in terms of education and what's the message, and they have to be the right person. Right. No, that's
know who they are at 17. Do we really know who a 17-year-old is?
Exactly. No, and I watched the progression of people. What you said, development of people, development of minds.
Yeah, I mean, one bad decision can damage your brand. So you've got to be very careful as you're vetting these young people. It's just not that easy. And then the other thing is, I think we get so caught up in NIL, we lose value. We want to change the world. We want to level the playing field in the world. The best way to level the playing field in the world for race and religion and people in general is education.
Yes.
Like, we devalue the value of education.
Mm-hmm.
Like, here's what we should do with the NCAA. Schools should be able to partner student athletes with mentors from their institution to help build bridges for those people to cross to better themselves.
Yes.
So that when you graduate, one of the values of being a college athlete is when you graduate, you have these mentors that are going to stand beside you, not behind you, but beside you, and help you navigate the transition into your next life.
Mm-hmm.
So the NCAA, as opposed to saying they don't want interaction with alumni, should say, you know what? Once a kid comes to campus, we encourage this interaction with alumni. We encourage it because, you know what? If we can partner and have every single person in our athletic department be mentored and someone that you can count on to give you advice and to open up doors, well, man, that's more than anything that they could give you.
Absolutely.
We devalue education, we devalue the experience, and we don't understand the value of, the notoriety of being a college athlete surely opens up doors. So I'd love to see, I have no problem with NIL, but I'd love to see us put a greater value on actually the value of an education, because the education is the thing that's going to change our world.
Actually, we say every day in the prayer before the Shema, Lilmod Ulalamed, that we should learn and we should teach, and those have to go hand in hand, especially in the mentorship system. Last question before a closing remark. I have a great friend that's a big Blue Michigan fan, Juwan Howard, Coach of the Year this year.
I think he's a national Coach of the Year. It goes back to the same thing I said when I was fortunate enough to win the ACC Coach of the Year. I mean, if you look preseason, Baylor and Gonzaga were 1-2, and they're fulfilling legacy, and they're phenomenal. But Michigan wasn't in the conversation. Michigan has a transfer point guard from Columbia. They've got a freshman, Hunter Dickinson, who was at the Math High School a year ago. He's a mountain masquerading as a man. The guy's been incredible. and you've got Franz Wagner and Isaiah Livers and Eli Brooks. I mean, what he's done with this team, and you can tell the type of job he's done with the team is that his leadership is even keeled. And when they came out of the pandemic, which is really, really hard, even though it was just a pause for them, no one had the virus.
Mm-hmm.
They're down in the first half against Wisconsin. All right. And they outscore Wisconsin 40-20 in the second half. He never flinched, which means they're listening and hearing and believing and trusting.
Nice.
So, I would say that's what I'm doing something tomorrow on a game I'm doing, and that's going to be my pick for National Coach of the Year.
Nice. You heard it right here, Rabbi on the Sidelines. Last question. I ask every guest this every week. What's the message to our young people today? The value of sports and the value of faith, just like we began. How can they, if you wish, combine those two to make this world a little better tomorrow than it is today? Well,
yeah, sport is the most important thing sport teaches you is to be a great teammate. Be a great teammate in life. Like, the greatest thing you learn in sport is to connect with other people. And whether it's e-sport, like my man Lenny Silverman, who used to run the Jewish Y in Pittsburgh when I coached at Pitt, who's had an incredible job with e-sport tribe, whatever the organization is, which is whether it's e-sport, whether it's team sport, whether it's whatever, get involved with something, because the great thing about sport is that it brings people together. And get involved with sport, not just at your temple, whether in your congregation, but try to branch out, because you need to expose yourself. The great thing with sports is expose yourself to all different types of people of faith, religions, financial welfare or lack of it.
Mhm.
Well, and I think that's a great education in itself. So look, I just, again, full disclosure, I am not the greatest Jew in the world. I'm proud of my Jewish faith, but I'm not a guy that's going to temple. That's just the way I am. I'll go to the temple on the holidays, but I'm not going to temple.
We'll send you the Zoom link for this Shabbat.
Yeah, but I think that the foundation of my life, and seeing what my parents went through and experiencing anti-Semitism myself makes you stronger.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I think that's something that's important. But I'd say get involved, whether it's the congregation or whether it's outside of your school. I think sport is a great microcosm of life in terms of people respecting each other's differences.
And we do that exactly here at Sinai Temple. 5 years ago, we started a basketball camp, and I call it higher level basketball, higher level values. Every single day we have a social action project, whether it's collecting cans for the homeless. We actually run a special needs clinic of low income kids who are coming from East LA to Century City at Sinai Temple on a weekly basis, feeding them a nice warm lunch and giving resources to those parents as well. So I can't agree more with you. We are so thrilled. First of all, a big shout out to Coach Cloud.
I'm going to give you one thing. ABC Please. Food Tours. ABC Food Tours. Matt James, who's just on The Bachelor. It's a nonprofit that he's involved with. Mm-hmm. And it might be something that you guys would be interested in, because that's the mindset of his ABC Food Tours is basically using food to bring young underprivileged people together. Wow. To then teach them the value of nutrition, education, and goal setting.
That's amazing. Absolutely. So we want to do a big shout out to Coach Glaubach in New Jersey, who connected us, and really Nori Cohen, a good friend of ours at a Shomrei Torah synagogue. So thank you to Nori and to Coach Glaubach. We are very honored to have Coach Seth Greenberg, ESPN analyst, Maccabi Coach USA, two-time ACC Coach of the Year, and most importantly, a wonderful mensch. We look forward to seeing you College Game Day this week. ACC Network, Baldwin not on campus, an early happy Purim. And the message that you shared with us this morning really is the message of Purim, to bring out the wrongs in society and to make them right, to take off our mask and reveal our true identity through sports and through faith. Coach, it's so good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. Next week, the Jewish Jordan. We have Tamir Goodman joining us live from Jerusalem, the Jewish Jordan, next week on Rabbi on the Sidelines. Thank you.